party tonight! TV party tonight! TV party tonight! TV party tonight! We're gonna have a TV party tonight! Alright! We're gonna have a TV party, alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight! Alright! We'll pass out on the couch! Alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't wanna know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
And tonight, our favorite show is Hannibal, Season 2. Because it is the witching season here on the Rattlegion Broadcasting Network. We're doing all things horror. And this is our yearly look at one of the icons of the horror genre, Mr. my favorite chef, quite frankly, Hannibal Lecter. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Rattledge. And joining me tonight, the multiple Migs to my Hannibal Lecter. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Robert Winfrey. How do you do, sir?
I find it interesting that my shows on this network draws routinely more listeners than yours, yet I'm somehow the 2-bit character whose only relevant thing is related to bodily fluid, profane language, and then being talked into suicide by, in this particular metaphor, your character. I mean, you make me want to kill myself frequently, but not like that.
It was more of that character makes me laugh. It's the one thing I think about when I think about The Silence of the Lambs, and you make me laugh. You make me feel like dancing, Robert Winfrey. So, yes, you get to be multiple Migs. As for the stats, number 1, fuck you. Number 2, collective. There are plenty of shows, and I'm not getting into this debate with you again. You insist on talking down the network, that which employs you. I don't understand why.
What do you mean employs? Whoa, you don't get to say employs. You don't pay me for this.
You're like an intern. And in an internship, you are under the employ of the company. So there. Do we really need to have this debate? Can't you just accept the fact that some of the shows do fine numbers and let's move this along? Move it along. Move it along.
Sure, we can move along.
Thank you. Good grief. All right, so we, on the Long Road to Ruin, we looked at the 3 Hannibal Lecter movies proper.
God help us, there are actually 4.
I don't think I don't feel like we did the 4th one. I know we did some.
We did. No. We did all 4. Because I remember distinctly warning you that Hannibal Rising is just a bad movie. And you thought I was being, me. I was like, no, really, it's just bad. That's
the one that starts off with him as a kid, right?
Yes.
Okay, right, okay. So wait, there's Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon, Hannibal Rising. What's the one I'm missing?
Hannibal.
Oh, just Hannibal? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one with Ray Liotta, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And, I mean, if you want to get real technical, there's the Michael Mann movie Manhunter that's an adaptation of Red Dragon.
Yeah.
Actually has Brian Cox as a Scottish Hannibal Lecter. It's kind of great in its own right, mind you.
So we were focusing on the 4, count them 4, as you said, the 4 Hannibal Lecter movies. We did that on Long Road to Ruin. And then what came out of that was a discussion of, what's really good, though, and really fun to talk about on Halloween time, is the Hannibal series. So I said, well, this is going to be a 3-year epic. We started with Season 1 last year, around the same time. We are at Season 2, as I promised, and next year, God willing, we will finish up with Season 3, and then we'll have to figure out something else to do around Halloween time. Maybe we'll start on the Friday the 13th series. With that being said, though, we last left off with Season 1, where Hannibal Lecter had framed Will Graham as the Chesapeake Ripper, and off Will Graham went to the Baltimore State Hospital, with everyone believing that he did it. And that is where our story picks up here. Now, we're not going to go over these episode by episode because, as I've said before in previous TV parties, it gets a little too dense, a little too long in the tooth. I just want to talk about certain elements, performances, that sort of thing. It's mostly the same cast as it was last season, so there's not going to be a whole lot to talk about there. And as far as characters, it's the same characters from earlier, but there were some significant changes from season 1 to season 2, and I do want to talk about the surprise conclusion of his particular character, namely Abigail Hobbs. I need to discuss this with you. I have issues with this, but
how do you now?
But let me first say that if there's any one thing that I can draw from this show, if there's anything that really stays with me, is the food looks so good. I watch this show and I just get hungry. I don't care that the implication is that he's cooking people. Dude, he made a leg of lamb out of someone's real leg that looked oh my God. I just wanted to jump through the television set and eat that guy's leg. It looks so good, so scrumptious.
Yeah, I used to get weird looks from my family because when this was on the air, I was watching it. I couldn't watch it live because my local NBC affiliate wouldn't air it, which is fine. They own the station. It annoyed me, but annoyed me as a consumer, not because how dare they. So I watched it on NBC's website the day after because I wanted it known that I was actively supporting the show, not just pirating it. And I would watch the show and I would get weird looks from people around me because afterwards I go, man, that show makes me hungry.
Yeah.
And everyone would look at me sideways, take a step or two away from me. But no, it really does. There's such a beautiful. I mean, there's so many beautiful shots in this series in general. I understand why it never got a lot of recognition for certain aspects of its. From the awards categories of things.
Dude, it's a rough show. I mean, never mind some of the gross imagery, and the fact that they are deliciously cooking people on the show, or at least, they're being written to, not literally. But it's still, when you think about the average person, and I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but when you think about, like, when we do Damn You Hollywood and we look at the number one, the 5 highest grossing movies of the year, it's not exactly Schindler's List here.
Or anything even remotely interesting most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's comic book fare, it's lighthearted stuff. When you think about, I mean, and again, I don't want to get into a debate about this, but if you think about, like, what are the shows that have lasted the test of time, and the 2 shows right off the bat where it was very similar circumstances, high ratings, they went on forever, and the cast made millions of dollars. Friends, Seinfeld, and The Big Bang Theory, all comedies.
Lest we also forget Grey's Anatomy, which is in its 15th or 16th season on the air.
Right. So, I mean, we're not something as gorgeously shot and as psychologically weighty and testing as Hannibal isn't going to find a large audience. It's just not. The fact that it made it 3 seasons is a fucking triumph.
When it was canceled, my whole thing. I mean, initially my thought was, "Oh, good, please, Netflix, just for the love of all that's holy." Because I at that point I had enough faith in everyone involved for it not to just be, "Oh, we're free of network restrictions. That means boobs and more profanity." Dragging down, the overall show, and I don't think that's what would have happened here had they wound up going that route. Because again, there was a very clear artistic vision for this that did not necessitate, again, a tremendous amount of gore, a tremendous amount of profanity, or copious amounts of nudity. But sadly, the show did not get picked up anywhere else. There's ongoing talks every now and then. Bryan Fuller will occasionally tweet something about it and just twist the knife in my guts a little bit more because I love this show to death. But it's a thing.
I'll tell you what, nothing has inspired me more to learn to cook like French cuisine than this show, which is a weird thing to say because, again, people. But
the way it looks and the way Hannibal talks about food.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you not? Like, you have to have like no sense of taste.
Yeah.
Medically no sense of taste in order to not get some kind of reaction from that.
One of my my last comment on the food aspect of it, because I don't want to spend an entire hour talking about a show about a serial killer with, hey, did the food on there was awesome. So I get that, but I do have to talk about this just because there's an episode of American Dad where Roger eats what was the name of the cuisine? But it's the bird cooked whole. And I mean, they actually have an episode like that in this, which is assume where we go. I can't remember what it was, but yeah. It's towards the end of the season where basically they did that bit from American Dad in this show where he actually prepares it, but it's taken seriously. It's not like it was in fucking American Dad.
Well, yeah, it was a slightly different bird that also induced some kind of hallucinogenic response, and his whole thing was, I'm going to eat this while watching a $500 pay-per-view of Barbra Streisand singing covers of Celine Dion songs.
Right. right. But I'll tell you, like, the look on the character who plays Will, as he's eating, as he's sort of studying the bird, and then goes to eat it, and like his face, like he's expecting to think it's gross, and he's just so surprised. But that whole thing, like the whole concept of it, and then Hannibal's remark of, the traditionally you would wear a shroud to hide your face from God.
This is such a profoundly decadent thing that you don't want God to know it's you doing it.
Right. And he's like, but I don't hide from God. I'm like, that has to be my favorite scene of the entire series, the entire season so far. It's just so fantastic. And the whole look, if you had to describe Hannibal in one word, it would be subtle. As weird as that might sound because of the the grotesque murders that sometimes happen throughout the series. The acting, I mean, there's nobody that's tremendously overdramatic except for maybe Lawrence Fishburne on occasion. But I think in those moments it fits this scene. So like,
well, we get the only over the top character that you're going to get in this whole series in this season, but it also still fits, which is the weirdest.
Oh God, the guy, I know who you're talking about. We're jumping around here, and I do want to sort of.
We can get to him in a minute, but that was my only point of clarification. Is yes, the majority of this is unbelievably subtle, and it actually makes the character of Mason Verger stand out even more, but it still works.
How has Mason Verger not played a version of the Joker? He'd have been perfect.
No, I loved his take on that character. I really did. I think it's a crying shame that he didn't come back for season 3. They have a different guy play the character for season 3.
There's nothing left of him. He's fucking paralyzed and his face has been ripped to shreds. What is there to... he's just a voice at this point.
You don't remember the movie Hannibal, do you?
No.
Yeah. Because that's... Yeah, it's a thing. No, he's still a character. He's still alive. I mean, the first half, I think, of season 3 is essentially the novel Hannibal, where has people out looking for Lecter, and he wants to exact
that's
vengeance.
Right. Yeah, he's the rich paralyzed guy to be. All right, I remember now. I consume a lot of media. Sometimes it takes a minute. All right, let's talk. Let's break this down, and let's talk about the plot thread. It begins the way it ends. We have Jack Crawford coming to confront Hannibal, and they immediately break into a fight, which ends with Lawrence Fishburne being stabbed in the neck. And then we're right back to where we left off which is Will has gotten his mind back, but he's in Baltimore State. Unfortunately for him, he's in Baltimore State Prison being charged with multiple murders. And no matter how many times he's told people, but it's Hannibal, nobody will believe him. If there are like 3 sections of this season, this is section 1. Let me ask you a question. Since this was your suggestion, and you're kind of rewatching an old show now, Uh, did you have any problems with this season, or was it all wonderful for you? I mean, I'm curious to see what your reaction to season 2 was the first time you watched it.
Oh, the first time?
Yeah.
Very little complaint the first time. Trying to remember what issues I might have had with it. I find the Cynthia Nixon character a bit useless. But I also find Cynthia Nixon as a person generally useless, so I'm not sure how much that bleeds over.
I don't understand what your problem with this woman is. She's there. She's there from the Adrian School of Horrible Women to nag Lawrence Fishburne. That's her role.
I understand. I'm just saying, and I completely. My other gripe with her is like a complete lack of understanding about the actual structure of what her office should do, because she's not. There's actually an office called the Office of Professional Responsibility that is the FBI version of Internal Affairs, which is what would be doing this, not the Inspector General.
Yeah, but that's the fault of the writing, not the actress.
So it just puts the character in a bad position with me personally, and then she's just a nag. And if that's the only purpose a character serves, they shouldn't be there.
Okay. I mean, if you want to go a little bit deeper, if you want to give the character in the writing a little bit more credit, she's there as a hurdle for Jack to get over.
Yeah, and she also doesn't come back for season 3.
Oh, well, that's
memory
good.
Serves. She's a minor road bump on the course of this show and serves essentially very little purpose, other than to give Lawrence Fishburne a slightly different person to bounce off.
The other side of this is skipping all the way to the end of the season. She's the whole reason that the whole thing falls apart and goes the way that it goes.
Yeah, and that does need to happen. I suppose my only quibble with the writing would be I think they could have done a better job with it, but that's a minor quibble.
So, I mean, on second viewing, did you have a change of mind? Did anything? I'm curious to see if you had any other problems with it.
I'm trying to think of what I might have had a problem with, and I really have very, very few.
Mm-hmm.
Almost none, really. There's a couple of episodes that might have drugged just a bit, but this is also a show that has that. And when I say pacing, I don't just mean the writing. I mean they structured each episode to include sequences that are just looking at things on the screen. And they make sense, and they're supposed to do stuff and evoke things. I'm not complaining about it. But I suppose if I had another gripe, it would be something along those lines. But I even rewatching, I just didn't have a whole lot of, boy, this didn't work for me, this didn't make sense to me, stuff along those lines.
I think I was my only issue is I was a little impatient with the writing as far as getting to, and I'm glad it didn't take all season to get to this point. I'm glad they wrapped it up in 3 episodes. But getting Will out of the hospital and getting him off for murder convictions and shifting gears as to who either looking directly at Lecter or who the next patsy was going to be the Chesapeake Ripper. I felt like I knew at some point it was going to happen, and I kind of just wanted to get to the mall already and be done with it. So the first 3 episodes, in that sense, were a little hard for me to get through. In that I'm just, it's one of those where where if you're reading a book, and as the reader, something the other characters don't. Obviously, we all know Hannibal Lecter is the Chesapeake Ripper. And so there's a lot of frustration with the Alana Bloom character, and there's Lawrence Fishburne's agonizing for the first 3 episodes that he felt like he pushed Will too far, and and pushed him into being a serial killer. And it's just like, if it wasn't for the fact they're all good actors, and it's done well, the drama is done well, it's presented well, and you have this great scene with the chick from the X-Files who plays DeMaria, whispering to him "I believe you" and all of that, and her scenes with Hannibal Lecter are really, really good. Mads Mikkelsen, but So it's like it's all propped up by the acting, but it's one of those where it's like, okay, well, we got 13 episodes. This is kind of my complaint about some of the Netflix shows. This could have been a lot shorter, and we could have knocked off 3 episodes here. There were times I felt like they were stretching the story out just to get to 13 episodes, which I felt was a little unnecessary.
I can see the point there. I would disagree slightly. Yeah, I suppose if I disagree, it's on a few minor points. I agree with you about Alana, that there's different points in time in this show where she gets a little, what are you doing here, kind of thing. There's other stuff that she does that's really, that is really good and really interesting. I mean, once she and Hannibal hook up, there's a lot of time during that period with her character that is, where she does interesting things. But there's also some stuff that's just kind of, I'm not really sure why you're here, and then, but again, it's a very minor thing. I
also felt like her realization that Hannibal was Hannibal the cannibal, lacked sufficient horror.
Like, comes a little bit out of left field, like
it's very downplayed. Like, she undersells it for me. Like, that should this cannibal has been sticking his dick in you for months. Okay.
In fairness, there's a lot of that winds up playing more in season 3.
Okay, but that's not what we watch, and I have to judge what we watch.
She becomes a full-blown lesbian and tries to assist Verger in killing Hannibal and taking revenge on him for everything. But that's a whole other thing.
Well, I mean, but that's my point. Like, when she finally figures out, when it all comes crashing down. To have sex with somebody is a very intimate thing, obviously. And
I wouldn't.
I don't. No one. Nope. Turn the page, sir. Stay with me, Googly. It's a very intimate thing, and to know that the person that you shared your bed with, is eating people, but not only eating, like he isn't just like this crazed murderer. He's tricked you. He's manipulated you. He manipulated a person that you were formerly in love with. He made her look professionally like a moron.
Yep.
She should have been banned from any kind of behavioral science job for the rest of her life, and she should have never have gone as far past working at a Starbucks. And so. But her performance, when she realizes all of those things, when it all comes crashing down, she kind of does and then Abigail throws her out a window. So maybe there isn't enough time for it to fully register. I
agree with your point that when she walks in holding that gun as Hannibal, looking better than any man has any right to after a fist fight, wielding 2 knives and throwing his body weight against a door. Like, he should not look that good doing that. I've seen what people look like after fights, and despite the fact that, his cuffs are open and there's blood all over him, and he's been punched in the face a few times, his shirt's still tucked in, everything's still fitted properly, and that's still a damn good looking man trying to kill Lawrence Fishburne. There should have been more. I agree with you. I feel like there should have been more from her in that moment.
Yeah, I also felt like when she's clicking the gun and he's like, "I took the bullets." Like, should have thrown the gun at him or something. Like, there needed to.
She knew she had another clip in her purse. You just didn't have time to get to her.
But you're missing my point. It isn't a matter of like, I don't have a weapon. It's a matter of emotion. That should have been visceral and animalistic almost. Like, she really should have been reacting not just out of fear but out of anger. One fight. Look, she should feel so stupid that she's just striking out of her innermost emotions. She should have almost drooling at that point.
I don't know. That part of it, I much prefer that she kept her head about her. And was able to actually It's one of those things that in horror movies makes me just sick to my stomach every time I see someone do something that stupid. For example.
But do you understand the point that I'm making, though? Like, I don't feel like there was enough drama in that moment.
Yes, I understand your point.
Okay. I mean, you and I can choose to write and direct that scene as differently as, as what befits our personal taste. But I think we can both agree it undersold the drama that was presented undersold the moment and the impact that it was supposed to have on the audience.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, somewhat ironically, it's in stark contrast with Jack Crawford coming in and Lawrence Fishburne do it. There's a few truly great bits. There's some great bits of acting in this entire show. And one of the things that they are able to do routinely as actors is this. It's a really, really difficult thing where you react to something, but you're really trying not to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean one of the best examples I think in movies comes from Silence of the Lambs when Hannibal and Clarice are talking. The first time, actually, and Hannibal goes on his relatively epic spiel insulting her. And her response to that is very clearly trying not to let anything that he just said actually get to her. But it still gets to you just a bit, and you feel like maybe you pulled off not reacting to it, but it's clear that just a little bit of it did. Again, it's an unbelievably difficult thing to act. I mean, we do it all the time naturally as human beings. But to replicate that in a performance is very difficult. So when Lawrence Fishburne comes in and has a brief conversation with Hannibal before pulling his gun on him and trying to shoot him dead, it's the way Lawrence Fishburne acts it's again that same kind of thing, and it's really great.
The second part of the season is partially Will still in the hospital, partially him out, but it's the setting up of the director of the Baltimore State Hospital as the next Patsy, with Hannibal unable to securely pin the blame on Will. He's been exonerated.
He's also interested in Will, and he doesn't like Chilton.
Right. So now he has to find another Patsy, and what better Patsy than Dr. Chilton? And that takes up the second part of the season. This stuff I liked. This part of it I thought was interesting. And I remember having a very viscerally angry reaction to them to the cast settling on him as the Chesapeake Ripper, which was made only worse by the fact that Hannibal had implanted false memories in Miriam Lass, and then she fucking shoots him. Like,
do you mind if I spoil season 3 for you?
I won't remember it for next year, so go ahead.
He's not dead.
Are you shitting me?
Nope.
All right.
The way they sell it medically is the bullet enters his below his left, right? My right, his left. Below his left eye. It impacts, it tears through that part of his jaw, but it doesn't actually penetrate his skull. It wraps around the outside and then blows out the back. So his face is essentially destroyed. He has some prosthetics that he wears. Some internal prosthetics, but no, he's not dead.
Oh, well, whatever. Either way...
I mean, they turned... I have chat logs to prove this. Benjamin and I, our friend Benjamin J. Cologne, and I joked about this because he and I are both big fans of Lecter as a character, of this show in particular. He brought up a comparison between Chilton and... comic book character, well, comic book's a bit loose, but from the graphic novel Preacher, they have a character called Hair Star, who is not a nice person. No one in Preacher is nice, but just is put through the physical ringer throughout the course of that book. And not in like, someone has a bad day and they fall down a hill. Like, he loses limbs. I think one of the last things is a dog bites his groin off. Like, bad stuff happens to this guy, but they keep, like, patching him up enough for him to continue on with his mission. They put Chilton through some serious stuff. He had his guts ripped out in the first season. He gets shot in this one, and something else horrible happens to him in the third season. But no, he's for me, that was the really interesting thing about the writing for that whole kind of second arc, was they made Chilton somewhat sympathetic, and this is not a sympathetic character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Chilton's kind of a dick.
Yeah, but but here's the thing: when you're writing the show, you don't want to make him seem completely unsympathetic. So when that happens to him, the audience is supposed to react the way I did. Oh no, Hannibal fingered the wrong guy again, and he's going to get away with eating people. You bastard, and you poor dude. If you're like, oh well, fuck him. It's less of an impact.
Don't get me wrong, I get that, but given the way, again, just how Chilton is as a character, you spend that. I mean, even when he gets eviscerated partially by Dr. Gideon in season 1, you don't feel really bad for him in that moment. It's like, oh, this is a pretty terrible thing, but you're kind of a terrible person.
This, I'll tell you, this set up a couple of things which I really liked. It set off in Will's mind the idea that they're never going to catch Hannibal in any kind of conventional way. Like, they're going to have to catch him in the act, basically. Which sets up part 3 of the season. He's too good at what he does.
He doesn't make mistakes.
Right.
I mean, look at all this. Like, Will kind of got the blame for it. I mean, Will was actually more blamed for the copycat murders rather than the Chesapeake Ripper proper. But, like, we have everything we could want on Hannibal. We all kind of know it's him, but we need evidence. And then, oh, look at this. I'm able to manipulate everything you've seen and done to now make it unbelievably obvious that, no, it's this guy.
Right. But I'll tell you, like I said, when Miriam in her mind sees Chilton instead of who is truly there, which is Hannibal Lecter, and she reacts and shoots through the glass, I remember, like, having a very emotional reaction to it. Like, I got really angry. For a moment, it stopped being a TV show for just a moment, and I was just like, "Oh, you dirty rat!" And that's good. That's mark of good television. That you're not just passively watching images flick on an idiot box. That it captures your imagination and such that you react viscerally, which is what happened with me with that particular scene. So there was a lot of good stuff there. Which brings us to part 3 of the season, out of 3, which is the long con. It's Will deciding that he is going to fake an apprenticeship with Hannibal Lecter, and Hannibal Lecter trying to, whether he realizes that Will is faking it, and but is using the opportunity to turn him into a real serial killer, or he doesn't and still wanted to turn him into a real serial killer. Either way. And you can react to that in just a moment. But it's, again, this is where if you're not into, like, the subtle acting, and long stretches of dialogue, this is not the show for you. Though, here's the thing, and maybe you can kind of explain to me, because I've read through this now several times. The bit where it's implied he's killed Freddy, more so it's implied that he took a piece of Freddy's body to bring to Hannibal to cook. And then when he's like, "What are we eating?" and he says, "Long pig." I looked that up, and long pig is supposed to be human flesh, so I don't understand what I'm watching in that scene.
It's a weird scene. I suppose if I had to guess, and this is just a guess on my part, they are actually eating a person, because Hannibal's palate is incredibly refined. He knows if he's eating a person or not.
Mm-hmm.
I would guess it's meat from... Wasn't this right after he killed Randall Tier?
No, it's before.
Is it really before?
Well, I don't know. Hang on. Keep talking.
Because this is a relevant point.
I've got it open, so go try to make your point without it, but I'll find it.
Yeah, it's right after he's killed Tier, because that's the episode where they have posed his body.
Yeah, it's okay. So episode 9 is when he is. They go, "Well, you sent someone to kill me. I sent someone to kill you, or even Steven. Let's move on." And then it's the end of episode 10 where he tells them that they're eating long pig.
Yeah, long pig is a reference to humans because apparently, in terms of texture and taste, human is closest to pork.
I've often heard that. Though if you listen to the Eddie Izzard bit, apparently humans taste like chicken, but he may have been just making that up.
Yeah, but if I had to guess, it's either that or it was some other just like unclaimed body that the FBI had lying around. Because there is a body that is, burned in her place and has like denture replicas of her dental records so that they can misidentify her body. Like, there's something pretty elaborate there.
Right.
And I imagine that he just cut off the muscle that they talked about from whatever body this was. And I mean, it's not like Will hasn't already eaten people by this point anyway.
Right. They've all, if you've eaten at Hannibal's house, you've all. Which reminds me, my other favorite scene of this entire season was when Crawford, takes samples of the different hors d'oeuvres that he served at this giant dinner party, and he's expecting it to be humans, and none of it is. Absolutely none of it. But the best part about that is Mads Mikkelsen's performance in that scene makes you think, oh, they've got him dead to rights because he looks nervous, and he's like, not. Like, I don't understand.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the best part. Some of the best parts about this are subtlety and acting. Mads does so many great little things with just his eyes or the muscles right around his mouth that if you're not paying attention and you're not looking for it, might go completely unnoticed and you just get bored. But if you are looking for it, it really opens up some interesting thoughts about what the character is doing. Just the way that they react to each other is truly, truly great. Let me see. What else about... since we brought out, the third arc, we do have to talk about Mason Verger and that whole thing.
Lots of discussion of pigs eating people in these episodes.
A few, which pigs will do. I mean, the supreme irony that's 100% legitimate. Like, a pig will eat anything to survive, including a dead body. Getting him to eat live things is more difficult.
So this whole arc that rounds out the end of the season is, again, Will trying to lull Hannibal Lecter into a false sense of security by kind of coming under his mentorship, and Hannibal in turn trying to change Will into a serial killer. But we also meet two new characters. We meet Margot and Mason Verger, and I missed details around this. I binge watched a lot of it, so occasionally I was sort of half tuning out. But I guess Margot's whole thing is she tried to have the brother killed because he was keeping her inheritance from her.
No, she tried to kill him because he's an abusive, sadistic pedophile. Okay,
well, fine, sure. Like I said, there were some details about their relationship that just. I was asleep in the goal and the puck got past me.
She, for the record, she actually can't inherit. The will, her father's will actually specifies that it goes to Mason or a male heir.
Right, which is why when she's pregnant and that whole subplot comes up, Mason is very much intent on making sure she does not have a male baby.
Because then he's expendable.
Right. But, here's where, if you're looking for somebody who doesn't do the whisper acting, or is acting more over the top than fucking Lawrence Fishburne, Michael Pitt, you win the award. Holy cow. And like I said, I don't know how this guy hasn't gotten a job playing the Joker in some TV show or movie, with Batman. He came across as, and even if you don't like him as the Joker, he came across as so like Batman villain-esque.
He did, and the crazy thing is that it still kind of works. Like, I love his take on this character. I mean, It takes a lot for me to say that someone did as good a job or better than Gary Oldman. And for the record, Gary Oldman plays this character in the movie Hannibal and goes uncredited and is utterly unrecognizable under the prosthetic makeup they have for him. And is absolutely creepy. I mean, he's the creepiest part of that movie. And for someone to take, again, essentially the same character and put their own spin on it and do, in some respects, a better job than someone, who is as profoundly gifted an actor as Gary Oldman is saying a lot. And Michael Pitt does a great job of making this character unbelievably creepy and hateable. I mean, there is. We brought up Chilton before as kind of this antagonist who something bad happened to you, but you're kind of a dick. You want bad things to happen to Mason Verger. Like, this guy, you want. Even what happens to him, you kind of go, it's not enough. Like, something else should have been done to you. Like, you are just.
I will say this. That was I mean, as much as I was like, oh, you deserve to be fed to dogs. I was a little squeamish with him cutting his own face off and then cutting off his nose. I was like, boom.
I really do need to talk about the brilliance of that scene.
Go ahead. I'm going to take a breath. Go ahead and say what you want. Let me just say this. I'm thankful to whoever directed that episode that it was done in shadow and not particularly well lit to where you could see just how gross that really was, because I'd have vomited all over the place. Your witness.
I want to talk more. There's a few other things about Verger I want to bring up later.
No, just go through all your Verger stuff now.
Okay, if you want to. I love the way he and Hannibal interact, just because if you watch Hannibal during all of their interactions, the lightly veiled contempt that he regards this individual with, and yet still maintains the facade of his human suit. Like, the first time they meet and they shake hands, and then what happens immediately after, he's just looking at him, and Hannibal looks at everyone like they're less than human, but he really looks at this guy like there's already a tombstone on his head. I mean, he looks at this other person like I look at something I stepped on.
I got a kick out of the one scene where they start therapy, and Verger goes to just lay on the couch, and Hannibal, just sort of annoyed, kind of rolls his eyes.
Yeah,
It's just sit across from me, asshole.
And he leaves his jacket just kind of laying rumpled there, and just everything he does is, his own phrase for it is discourteous.
Right.
And just the way he looks at him. Not just the dialogue, not the way he pushes him around the proverbial chessboard, all of which is great, but just his eyes every time he interacts with him. Because, again, it's one of those things where if you're just looking at it and you're not really looking, you might miss it.
The contempt.
But if you look at it,
he holds him in such contempt. Yeah, there's utter contempt behind, like, as a therapist, you're supposed to have kind of like a blank poker face. But even behind a practiced blank poker face, you could feel the contempt trying to find its way out.
Yeah, which again goes to just the brilliance of the acting.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I like Verger as a counterpoint to Lecter and to some of the world that this takes place in, because it's very understated. So having this guy who is the way he is, over the top in some respects. But I suppose the oddest thing about the way he goes over the top is that he does it in spurts. There are these long periods of time when, while he's still... If you just encountered this guy on the street, you'd know he's weird. And you'd probably know he's an ass. But he's able to loosely hold together a facade of the ability to interact with another human. It's
amazing because he really does come across as like the Christopher Lloyd character from the very, very end of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like, he delivers most of his lines like, "Remember me, Eddie?"
Yeah. But again, and I don't know why it works. I really don't. I wish I understood the full nuances and the technicalities of why this very over the top in some respects performance actually plays well with all of these other people giving these very subtle, nuanced performances.
I'm trying to think of what else I've seen him in. Oh, that's right. He was in Boardwalk Empire. That's where I remember him from.
I mean, that the scene where he takes that kid aside in the stables and just verbally abuses him until he's in tears.
Right, and then he just throws him the chocolate. He's like, "Here, have a chocolate." Has no concept of what he's just done. Just utterly divorced from it. He's gotten what he's needed and walks off. So I'm just looking at his Wikipedia page for just the character Mason Verger. He was nominated for a EWWY award for Best Guest Actor in a Drama and a Saturn Award for Best Guest Starring Role on Television in 2015.
Again, he does a great job, and I thought it was a shame that they got somebody else for season 3. I don't know. I think it was his choice not to return, which is, again, sad, because I would have loved to have seen what he would have done with Mason as a quadriplegic under the makeup.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy they got isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. But anyway, that last scene, where he's, again, cutting his own face off.
Ugh.
I love the setup. I love the psychedelic concoction that Hannibal gives him. I love his reaction to it, because if you give that guy that type of drug, that's what's going to happen. I mean, I think my favorite moment from that brief scene when he is drugged is when he looks at Lecter and goes, "I am enchanted and terrified." Because, and again, the first time you see it and you hear that line, you're like, okay, he's still the same character, but this time around I actually paid attention to his eyes when he said that, and he's still reacting to this, stimulus overload that the showrunners were kind enough to hit us with as well. Thanks, Crazy Carnival music. But when he says he's terrified, that's legit. Just behind all of the manic laughter is this sense of genuine terror that this monster is now going to get me to do whatever he wants. And I'm going to think it's a good idea.
Anything else on the Verges? Because I want to talk about the finale.
Okay, real briefly. Sorry, that final scene. Okay, this is what I was going to say. One of the things that this show gets absolutely right that I think some of the movies failed to really get, they never make Hannibal someone you root for.
Right.
And this is why that last scene is so brilliant, mind you. Because here is this horrible character who has done horrible things, who you wish to see suffer greatly, in a position doing horrible things to himself, and you want to cheer for this because this is what you want. But if you take just a moment to think about it, he's feeding himself to Will's dogs. Mark, do you know what happens to a dog that's eaten people?
What?
You have to put it down.
Okay.
The point being, Will's dogs, which are things he cares deeply about, now have to be destroyed. Literally in the midst of what should be this glorious moment of triumph over this horrible, horrible person, is Hannibal still finds a way to set this up to be negative. Because I don't remember if it's in the last episode that they show him burying his dogs or if it's the start of season 3. But yeah, he has to put all of his dogs down because they have now eaten people. And you have to put down a dog that has eaten human flesh.
Right.
So they take this, again, moment that we should all be celebrating to one degree or another, because no one's rooting for Mason Verger. And because of the way Hannibal has orchestrated it, it's still a loss. You can't celebrate it. They never let him be someone you cheer for in almost any context. And it's one of the things that this show gets absolutely right that was lost on some of the movies. And, well, I'll briefly... Catherine Isabel does a great job. this was one of the shows that kind of got her into. Based on this, in a lot of respects, she kind of became one of the new, premier scream queens going in the world right now. I mean, there was this. She was in Ginger Snaps, which was a lot of that as well. But this was she's done a lot in the horror genre that, as someone who does consumes a lot of horror, I appreciate, because she does a good job. I mean, that scene when she is essentially paralyzed and Mason is telling her, no, I'm not only going to abort your child, I'm going to render you sterile.
Just so people know, she's actually in Bad Times at the El Royale. She was in, let's see, she's in a lot of things. Just I don't know if anything anyone would have actually seen. A lot of television. Last couple of things were Little Dog, The Arrangement, Rosewood, Hannibal, Psych. So yeah, she definitely gets a lot of work. All right.
So anyway, I just wanted to bring her up because again, she does a really good job, I think, and she just kind of gets overshadowed in some she doesn't get as much credit as she deserves, I feel, for a lot of that.
Apparently, she's won a lot of awards for American Mary. So if you want to check that out.
Which is a good kind of horror movie if you're into it. I enjoyed it tremendously. It was a really good take on that story.
So let's talk about this finale. It all comes to this. Jack's going to confront Hannibal. He's going to incite him to murder, and then they'll have him, and they can go from there. This is where Will has been leading the second half of the season all along, is to get Hannibal to try to break his facade and reveal himself to Jack, so that they can finally arrest him and pin maybe even pin the murders of the Chesapeake Ripper on him, as they Will's wanted to do all
considering
along.
He actually committed them.
Yeah, well, right now the wrong person's been pegged with that. But anyway, the point is everything that's happened in the first two seasons has come to this point, and it's a long fight scene, and then you have the stuff with Alana, which we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. And then, why? Why did we need Abigail Hobbs to, 1, be alive, and 2, go, I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to do, and then throw Alana out the window? Then, and I'll tell you this, her being alive, and then ultimately what happens to her because of the connection.
Oh, she dies. She's dead.
Thank you. I was trying to make a point. Thank you for just running through the red light and T-boning me. On the one hand, I didn't see the need for her to be there, and for me, it didn't make any sense for her to be there. But then when Hannibal kills her in front of Will, I'm like, well, okay. As an instrument to truly damage Will, I get her presence and then her need to be killed in front of him. However, as an isolated event, I get it, in terms of what that does to Will's character. But logically, what has she been doing for all this time? Just hanging out in the attic? Like, that's...
but... Okay, would you... I can actually answer some of this.
Yeah, please do.
Some of this goes to, again, very long... You mentioned there's a lot of long con in certain parts of this show. There's a lot of that in the relationship between Hannibal and Will. Abigail means something to Will because she's one of the few people he saved. So when Hannibal removes her in the first season, Will takes it very hard. Once Hannibal... But a lot of this is... Okay, let me rephrase. A lot of this is more Hannibal trying to set up Will to join his side. And removing Abigail put him in a very unstable position emotionally in season 1, but my understanding is his genuine plan, because you have to remember, for the majority of season 2, he believes he believes that he is successful, that he is manipulating Will into becoming like him. And then at the very end, he gets that whiff of Freddie Lounds on him and knows, oh, you've been lying to me.
Right.
Okay. I think when he says, I wanted her to come with us, I think I think that was genuine. I think he was grooming her outside of Will's influence. There's actually a specific location that he keeps her at. He has a second house out by the cliffside by the ocean that plays more of a role in season 3 as a location. And he's just been preparing her to
let me ask you a question.
Valuable to their.
Let me ask you a question. This is all well and good. Where in season 2 is any of that explained?
I mean, literally at the end when he says, "I wanted her to come with us. I wanted to surprise you because you're my friend."
Okay, I feel like I feel like they went a long way to set up a big surprise that, for me, only pays off because he kills her in front of Will. Any other thing, and I don't think it pays off enough for the amount of nonsense it takes to get to that point.
That's fair. Part of the other reason I think it plays that way for people in our position now is, the time displacement.
Mm-hmm.
If you were watching this, I hate this excuse, mind you, but I think it is. Let me rephrase. This is not an excuse, but if you are to fully, this is one of those things that requires context for the effect it could have on the audience. If you watch the first season 1 week at a time, followed by, a year later, the second season 1 week at a time, it's very different from binge watching the first season over the course of 3 or 4 days to waiting a year to binge watch the second season over the course of and again, that's not to say that your point is invalid, because I don't believe it is. But there's also context for shows like this, for any network show, that gets lost when viewed under different circumstances than originally intended, is all.
I mean, let me add this. It's not that I'm against, out of left field surprises, but you have to use them sparingly, and you have to use them pointedly. And I feel like it was too jarring to have... she should have showed up when... she shouldn't have been the reason that Alana goes out the window. I was perfectly fine with Mad Mikkelsen goring her out the window like fucking Goldberg. Okay?
Oh, he wouldn't... Oh, no. He would not have thrown her out the window. He would have just stabbed... He would have just slit her throat.
I'm good with either.
The problem... Again, the only problem there is if you want Alana alive, and they do, you need someone who is not going to methodically and scientifically kill her very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. I would have
so the poor traumatized girl who's told by this monster of a human who's been inside her head for however long he has, manipulating her already somewhat damaged psyche because her father was also a monster, into, okay, if someone other than me comes in this room, shove him out the window.
Okay, I get the logic behind that. What I'm saying is, as a dramatic effect, I would have much preferred her to have crawled out, to the balcony or something, and have Lecter, kind of come after her, and she, she's just trapped and she doesn't know what to do, and she falls. You don't push her, she just falls. And it's she made a bad choice by going out there in the rain in the first place. Because I just felt like having this character who I thought was dead, by the way, just show up out of nowhere in her only lines of dialogue are "I didn't know what to do," and then throws her out the window. It felt too jarring. I had too many questions, and the whole impact of the scene is lost on me because of that. Now she shows up 5 minutes later. and gets between Hannibal Lecter, like maybe Will finally gets the drop on Lecter, and he's going to kill him, he's got the knife over his face, and you hear stop, and he turns, and and she says something to Will. She's like please don't hurt him, and he's like brack, and then he gets stabbed. Much more effective, at least in my opinion.
I'm fine with the way it played out, but I don't think that's the worst idea in the world. Also about the finale, I love that finale. I love that so much. I love that in no small part because I'm a fan of violence. So the fact that he guts Will.
Mm-hmm. I don't understand how Will lives to see season 3.
Oh, there's already... If I have a gripe about the finale, it's the chronology of it feels a little bit weird. It seems like more time passes than actually passes.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, remember, Alana already called for emergency responders.
Yeah, and then Will called when she went out the window and everything.
Yeah, so okay. There's already people on the way, and don't get me wrong, he comes very close to dying anyway.
Right.
But yeah, he gets and I love when Lecter cuts open Abigail's throat. It's actually a really great contrast to how her father did it in season 1, because he opens up the same scar tissue. I mean, it's literally the same thing, the same location, but Hannibal's cut is significantly deeper. It's one of those subtle things about this show that, like, no, I want you to die. I want you to die the same way. I want Will to once again watch you bleed out in a kitchen.
Yeah, I feel powerless.
But I'm going to make sure it gets done properly this time. I honestly had somewhat misremembered that. In my head, he went all the way across. Like, he went ear to ear with that. Like, just no way in hell you're surviving. But it's absolutely deep enough. I really liked the fight between Lecter and
it's brutal. And I remember even in the first episode where he takes the glass in the neck, I was like, Jesus Christ. I mean, it's very well done. It's very well choreographed. It's sufficiently brutal. It definitely does induce a little bit of fear, I think, in the viewer. It's fine. I'll tell you what, season 2 definitely, more so than season 1, ends with a sufficient enough cliffhanger that I'm really excited to see what happens in season 3. Like, I was more curious to see what was going to happen in season 2. Did
you stick around to the end of the credits at the end of the last episode?
I know that he's seen boarding a plane to France with what's her face from the X-Files, but that's about it.
Yeah, they're on a plane to France, and she's Dr. Du Maurier is a much bigger role in season 3.
Okay, well, we'll next year, as a matter of fact, I can tell you exactly when. For those of you marking your calendars to want to hear when we're going to conclude this series. That's right, folks. I already have 2019 all planned out. Let's see. All right. Googly. September. That's when we're doing it. September 3rd. So close to Halloween. Problem is October is so incredibly booked up right now that I don't have room for it. Though I may end up moving it. Who knows? But right now...
stuff will move. There's so many things that you have on the schedule right now that are just not going to be there.
October right now is full up with Abominable, Joker, Jungle Cruise, Zombieland, and then a TV party for Constantine. So, where I threw Hannibal was September 3rd of 2019.
All right. Let me see. Were there any things I wanted to ask you about this? Oh, did you have a favorite kill from this season?
Ooh, good question. Let's see.
'Cause I know mine.
The eyeball was gross.
I love the eyeball. That was so cool.
I think I like the mechanical moose thing. I thought that was. I legitimately was like, "What the hell is that?" And I thought, what? I like the idea of someone building themselves like an Iron Man suit, but it's an animal. It's just fucking mauling people.
There's so many references in the everything that deals with that character to the Red Dragon. It's kind of scary. Like rewatching this season, there's so much foreshadowing and allusion to season 3, and I mean that in a good way.
I would tell you, I would have a harder time picking what was my favorite dish that Hannibal created. He created, I think one of my favorite things. I was telling my wife about this. One of my favorite sequences is him making breakfast, and they're intercutting it with
the egg thing.
Yeah, and they're
so jealous,
and they're intercutting it with Will getting breakfast at the Baltimore State Hospital, and it's just spoonfuls of spoonfuls of slop, compared with this like gourmet breakfast that Hannibal's creating. It's just like, I cannot watch this show and not get hungry.
You really can't. No, and I mean he does that thing with the egg. We tosses it in the air with his like little metal spatula, turns the spatula sideways over the bowl, and it just lands perfectly on top of it. Mm-hmm. And I have no problem believing Mads Mikkelsen is capable of doing that.
I'm actually curious how much like he was trained as a chef to prepare for this role.
I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but he's incredibly believable in it, and he also
kicks ass.
I mean, and that man rocks a suit. I mean, his wardrobe must have taken up a significant portion of the budget because
those are some very expensive suits.
Those are expensive. For the record, since I asked you, I really loved the microscope slides that he made.
Oh my god, yeah, I tell you what, that was the most sympathetic kill. I felt real bad for her because she's like, all right, I'll look at. Oh my god, Hannibal Lecter is the Chesapeake Ripper, and I'm dead.
I love that. I love that scene because she's snooping around, and just that scene when she turns on the lights and they start from in front of her to behind her, and about the time the second one goes off, you might catch a glimpse of Hannibal's shadow behind her, and when you get all the way to the third, he's just standing there. It's a really effective scene. I love that. I love that way that was set up.
All right, folks, that brings us to the end of our yearly discussion of Hannibal Lecter. Next week, you get a double dose of Robert, and I will do the Damn You Hollywood review of the now in continuity sequel to Halloween. And then 2 days later, we'll be looking at Daredevil Season 3, loosely based on the Daredevil series Born Again, which we'll be looking at on source material as of next Monday. You can also stay tuned
if they're really going through with that, I genuinely hope that the last 3 episodes are an adaptation of Last Rites.
I haven't read it.
It's essentially Daredevil doing to Kingpin what Kingpin did to him in Born Again.
There's
just one panel from it that I remember vividly. Daredevil sitting in Kingpin's chair with his feet up on his desk, holding one of his cigars as Fisk's life is deteriorating. He just looks at him and goes, "How's it hanging, Willie?" And I would love to see that immortalized on film.
That'd be good. So no show this Thursday or Friday. However, we will be doing Castlevania Season 1 just in time for Season 2 to come out. That's how we roll here on the Rattlers and Broadcasting Network. So a bunch of us are going to get together Saturday night at 9 o'clock, and we'll discuss Castlevania Season 1.
Oh, this Saturday?
Yeah, the 20th.
Crud. I will not be available.
Oh, why not?
It's my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thanks.
But like I said, next week we got Daredevil and Halloween. The week after that, there'll be an on trial for Halloween 2 from 1981, and then a bunch of us again will be getting together on November 1st, a Thursday night, to discuss, to do a commentary over Spaced Invaders as we celebrate the broadcast of War of the Worlds. We've got source materials for Deadpool, Dracula's Gauntlet, Venom, Lethal Protector, Batman Haunted Night, Daredevil Born Again, and Halloween Night Dance. All here in the month of October. It's also Covers Month all month long. We got Power Glove, Continue, Mystic Prophecy, hot stuff, baby. Monuments, Uncovered. This week is Devil Driver, Outlaws Till the End. Next week, Spurn the Priest. And finally, the boys from Italy just want to have fun. It's Trick or Treat Reanimated. Robert?
There is no episode of the 411 Ground and Pound radio show. No, it was last Sunday. We didn't have one. I think we do have one this Sunday. I need to.
You should. You've got a fight card coming up the following Saturday, the 27th. Vulcan versus Smith.
So we'll have one. We'll have one on Sunday the 21st to preview Fight Night 138. It's a terrible card. Oh, you think I'm joking? Like
no.
I complain. I complain about card quality a lot. The main event for this fight is Volkan Oezdemir and Anthony Smith, which, okay, not the worst thing in the world. I can live with that. I can even live with that as the main event, because light heavyweight is a wasteland, and those are two guys who are kind of on the rise. But let's look at the rest of the main card, shall we? Your co-main event is Artem Lobov, who should not be in the UFC. I think they got Michael Johnson to replace him, because it was supposed to be him and Zubaira Tukhugov. At this point, I'm convinced Artem Lobov exists in the UFC only to further the occasional narrative of Conor McGregor versus fighters who are actually good. Because Lobov's his only UFC win, I want to confirm this. Now, he beat Teruto Ishihara, but prior to that, he only has 2 wins in the UFC. One of them was over a fellow by the name of Chris Avila, who was brought into UFC 202 specifically to further the narrative of Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 2. Because Avila trains with Diaz and Lobov trains with McGregor. Artem Lobov sucks. He is the worst. He is terrible. And he'll be fighting Michael Johnson, who also kind of sucks. We have another light heavyweight fight. Misha Serkinov and Pat Cummins. Andrei Sukumtot should be fired after his last fight, but he's on the main card. John Vellante fights Ed Herman. There are 3 light heavyweight fights on the main card. What the hell? What did I do? What did New Brunswick, Canada do to deserve this?
Okay.
Oh god, it's such a bad card. It is so bad, but we'll go over it. We'll go over the news. Eddie Alvarez signed with ONE FC. John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson 2 got booked. Daniel Cormier versus Derek Lewis got booked. So we'll go over the major news. I'll lament the state of that card. I'll lament that I have to watch it and cover it. Then I'll do it. At this point, I could probably do it in my sleep, because this is not a good card. I should just copy and paste an old report and see if anyone actually pays attention to the difference, but not this one. No one cares. So you can find me there. Again, you can find me back here next week when Mark and I will talk about Halloween, which I'm looking forward to. Looking forward to that one. Not every Halloween movie is great, but I enjoy a lot of the franchise. I actually enjoyed Rob Zombie's 2 Halloween movies. Puts me in the minority, I know, but I did, so sue me. So that'll be a lot of fun, and yeah, again, Mark kind of laid out a lot of the schedule, so be on the lookout for all of that. And then again, most Sundays, let me see. So that would be the 21st, and you are yeah. So the week after, so not this Sunday, but the next Sunday after that, we'll be reviewing Fight Night 138 if I survive, and previewing UFC 230, which finally got a main event after the universe rightly crapped on Shevchenko versus Eubanks as a main event. We now have Daniel Cormier and Derek Lewis, and we'll see if Derek Lewis and his balls that get hot very easily, apparently, can overcome the deficit he has in every conceivable area of fighting against Daniel Cormier.
Unless he gets a lucky shot, Daniel Cormier is going to eat him up.
I mean, Cormier's hand won't be at 100%. He's got a hand injury that he'll be fighting through. Now,
yes,
unless that hand is literally tied behind his back.
But he's an Olympic caliber wrestler, for fuck's sake.
And Derek Lewis is
Black.
Derek Lewis.
Black.
I mean, Derek Lewis is hilarious, mind you. I love Derek Lewis, but
sure. I have a question. Are you going to watch
that fight.
Are you going to watch the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder boxing match?
Probably, if I can.
We should do you, and Pat then should do commentary over that.
When is it?
December 1st.
Let me see. Hang on.
Oh shit! That's the night of a UFC card.
Maybe. Hang on. Because that's an Australia card.
Okay.
And those can have some wonky broadcast times. I don't know what it's being broadcast on. I don't know. They don't even have a full card announced. It might be, this is so weird because some of their cards have done this. Like, oh, it'll be Saturday in Australia and it'll actually be Friday here in this. Like, it's weird.
Yeah. No, I know that.
So, if I'm able to, I would love to. If not, that'll be why.
Okay. All right, folks. Hope you've enjoyed our discussion of Hannibal Season 2. I did. I thought it was, I thought we had a good discussion. It's one of the rare ones where Rob and I didn't want to strangle each other by the end of it. So, that's always good. My blood pressure remained normal throughout this. I didn't yell and scream at you this time for saying ridiculous things. So, good for you, Robert. Nice job.
Yay, me.
All right. For the great Robert Winfrey, I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. This has been TV Party Tonight. Be well, be safe, and behave.